Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our March monthly webinar. My name is Mariah Katayev, and I'm hoping we have some returns here. So you've seen my face before, but I wasn't here for the last one, so very glad to be back. And we are going to be talking all about how you can make an emergency plan and how you can practice it. But before we get into that, I would just like to remind the people that are watching this live that if you ask a question in the comments, we'll actually see it on the screen and be able to answer it live time. So feel free to ask any questions throughout this webinar, and we will try to answer it to the best of our ability. If we do not know the answer, we will try to find you the answer. For those watching this recorded, feel free to comment on the video, and we will try to get you an answer as well. And I would like to introduce my co-presenter today, Carly Mullinax. And Carly, would you just like to tell everyone, what you do and what your title is here in the agency?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mariah. So my name is Carly Mullinax. I am the Access and Functional Needs Planning Specialist here at the Department of Emergency Management and Security. And that basically means that I am responsible for making sure that Fairfax County residents and visitors who have disabilities or medical issues, seniors, anyone with any type of access or functional need is accounted for in our planning process, and we're doing outreach to make sure that they're as prepared as they possibly can be. So,
Thank you, Carly. And we're really lucky to have her. So we're really grateful for it. And I'm going to be doing the first part of the presentation, and then it will pass over to Carly. So you'll hear me talk for a little bit, and then you'll hear her talk for a little bit. But each of us will try to answer the questions, again, to the best of our ability. So I'm really excited about this. So let's get started. For those that have not seen our webinars before, Ready Fairfax is our front-facing initiative that the Department of Emergency Management and Security uses. And the goal of Ready Fairfax is to prepare our county for emergencies and empower our members to be as prepared as possible and to be as responsive as possible. We have a great website online where you can learn more about emergencies at your own pace, and you're able to download and print out all of our resources. There are also ways to translate our resources online if you have a family member or someone you know in the community that does not read or speak English. We have resources for them online to still be able to access the material. This is just a little overview of what we're going to be going over today. Module 1 will be Resolve to be Ready. Module 2 will be Making an Emergency Plan. Module 3 will be Practicing our plan. And Module 4 is just what's next. It's what's coming up and what we're excited to talk about in the future. So let's resolve to be ready in 2023. We've all heard this phrase before because this has been the theme that DEMS has been pushing. We want everyone to resolve to be as ready as they can in 2023. So every month we're trying to teach the public a new step to do that. And this is where we are in the calendar. We are currently at making an emergency plan and practicing it. And if you miss the January or February webinars, they are on our YouTube page, and you are able to go back and watch them at your own time. So we're really excited. And if you miss the other two, I highly recommend you go and watch them. They're full of great content and information. So let's get into the bread and butter of it. First, we want to talk about what a blue sky is and what it means to do something under a blue sky. In the world of emergency management, a blue sky means a day where there is no disaster, no fires, floods, no cyber attacks, no hazmat leaks, no really large traffic accidents. It is a good day. It is a day where there is not an emergency afoot. It is a day where we are not in a response. We are not in a recovery. It is a great day. And those great blue sky days are the days that we want to prepare for our emergencies. We want to work on our emergency plans when we have the time and we're not panicked, so that we have our plan ready for us when we are panicked. So blue skies are the calm, it's the calm before the storm. So it is the calm before the emergency takes place, and it's our best friend when it comes to preparedness and getting ready for emergencies. These are the planning assumptions that we like to say for Fairfax County that every resident should try to follow when they are making their emergency kit and their emergency plans. You should plan to be self-sufficient for 3 to 5 days or longer, but 3 to 5 is the federal framework that we are going with currently. So you should assume that you will have no water, no power, no heating or cooling, a difficulty or inoperable communications, including phone, internet, or Wi-Fi, and then you might have trouble using electronic money, and then you might have trouble going places, getting things to you, getting trash or recycling taken away, or getting outside help. This is really scary to read all of this together, and we completely admit that. But it's important because unfortunately, if there is a really, really, really wide emergency, we're going to have to help the people that are really in the most danger first. And unfortunately, that puts people that are, definitely in trouble but not in immediate danger kind of in the middle. They're not 100% unaffected, but they're not the ones getting affected the most. So that's when you really need to plan on being self-sufficient until help can get to you. So, how can we start our plan today? I am a firm believer that an emergency plan is something of a family initiative. It is something that people of all ages can be involved, and I do mean kids. There actually are lots of ways to make emergency plans fun, the practice fun, and to make it less scary, and we're going to go over that today. So if you take anything away from this webinar, I hope you take away that your children, if you have kids, can be involved in emergency planning. Kids can be more confident in times of emergency if it's something they've learned or practiced. So call a family meeting and discuss the hazards that concern you the most. What are you afraid of the most? Are you more afraid of floods because you've seen a lot of flooded roads? Are you more afraid of lightning or thunder? Are you afraid of snow? Like, there are things that everyone definitely has a concern with. I, for one, have never been through a serious tornado, so tornadoes are definitely one for me, and I completely admit that. They are terrifying, huge spirals of wind that can cause a lot of damage, and they're definitely my most concerning hazard, but it really can vary per person, per family, per situation. And we want to figure out what our most concerning hazards are, and then figure out what we do from the majority of disasters. And it says for each likely disaster, so that would be the ones that, Fairfax County is more prone to. So we hear a lot about flooding, thunderstorms, a lot of the weather, and we're going to go over more of those throughout the presentation. But I would like to say that your basic actions can work for a lot of them. So please don't take away from this that you have to be really stressed and you have to do step by step by step individually for all hazards. A lot of these things can work for multiple situations, and we love that. It makes it more practical. Ooh, imagine going through a tornado as a first-time parent with a 3-week-old. I am sure that was not fun at all. I am sure that was terrifying for everyone involved, and I hope everyone is okay. And I especially, of course, hope the 3-week-old is okay. But yes, I do not envy that, and I really hope that worked out as well as it could have. And for when we have to shelter in place or evacuate, it's important to know what we would do in those situations. For example, I live in a condo. I don't have a basement. So when it comes to sheltering in place, sheltering in a basement is just not a practical option for me, and I admit that. But I also know that my other best option is my bathroom because it has no window and it has a bathtub. So all that structural support, all the pipes, it is my next best option for my personal situation. A meetup point. Those are really, really important, especially if we have children. For example, let's say there was maybe a fire. And, with fires, doorways get blocked, and maybe you can't get out the way that you were planning or the most thought of way, such as the front door, or you can't go to the mailbox, the most common meetup spot. It's really great to have a meetup spot, maybe a couple houses down, where they're within range, but out of the hot zone. They're out of direct danger. Discuss how you will communicate if you are separated. It is important to understand that when there are really, really big, large-scale emergencies, phone calls might not always work. So I'm a huge fan of text. I'm a huge fan of, if there is Wi-Fi, using some sort of Wi-Fi based messaging. I know that is not an option in all emergencies, and I admit that. And identifying an out of area contact in case local communication lines are not usable. So you want someone that is enough out of the area that, for example, if something hit Fairfax County, it would not hit them because they are not a resident of Fairfax County. They live far enough out of the area that a localized emergency would not affect them. This is our community emergency response guide, which I like to describe as, it's like the guidebook. It is a great way to start prepping for all kinds of emergencies and to do it at your own pace and to do it in a way that is comfortable for you. As you can see on your screen, we have a way to get it digitally online, and we also have it physically. You can't take it home, but you can go and physically look at it at every major branch library in Fairfax County. It is a great way to learn the hazards that affect us, great steps to do before, during, and after these hazards, and staying informed and how to get involved. And staying informed is definitely one of the biggest things, and we're going to spend a lot of time on that today. This is a great review on the hazard identifications. So we're seeing it from high to low, as high, the ones that most often affect Fairfax County, that are really big concerns that we see more often and we're more likely to see within Fairfax County. That doesn't mean the others aren't dangerous or scary. That just means that over the years, we've more commonly seen the ones in the high area. So that's winter storm, floods or flash floods, high winds or severe storms. Then we get into the mediums. We've seen these, we've just seen these less often. We have our dam failures, our tornadoes, yay. We have our extreme temperatures, drought, and earthquake. And then we have our low risk ones. They're not impossible, just historically, they're very, very uncommon to affect Fairfax County. So wildfires, sinkholes or land subsidies, and landslides. This is an image out of the Community Emergency Response Guide to give you an idea of when you open the book, what it's going to look like. This is our winter weather and extreme cold page, and it breaks it down into really great sections. It does a little description of what winter weather is, key terms that you might see, well, one, throughout the book, or two, on your national weather station when you hear the news. Not everyone knows the difference between a watch or a warning, and that's okay. We have this book to help you learn that. It breaks down what to do between before, during, and after, and it has steps that we recommend are great to take during those phases. You're going to see that the first one for before is signing up for Fairfax Alerts. That goes right back to that staying informed. It's really, really important for public safety agencies to be able to update people on the situations, and Fairfax Alerts is a great free program for that. And my favorite saying with Fairfax Alerts is it can be as involved or uninvolved as you want. And what I mean by that is, Fairfax, there's a lot of cars. And because of that, I chose to disable the alerts for traffic, just to make my life easier. And as you can see on the screen, there is a new user section and an existing user section. So if you're hearing this and you're like, hey, I'm in Fairfax Alerts right now, and I'm getting really, really tired of all the traffic alerts, you're going to go to existing users, log in, and you can edit your notifications. We have a video on a walkthrough of how to do Fairfax Alerts, how to register. If you have any issues that the video doesn't help with, feel free to call our office, and we are happy to help you understand Fairfax Alerts and maybe walk you through, probably through the phone, or we can even do a video chat if necessary, how to sign up for Fairfax Alerts. But again, it can be as uninvolved or involved as you want it to be. There is a template for that. Love it. We love titles that bring energy. We love titles that are easy to remember. But this is also in the Emergency Response Guide. And this is part of the appendix, and it's a way to develop your family preparedness plan. A big thing that I like to say with this is if you fill it in online and then you go away from the browser, the information is going to go away. So if you're going to fill it out online, it's really, really important that you download the document first and save it to your desktop, your documents folder, whatever situation works for you. So if you're just opening it up and typing it in right here, but you're doing it online and you don't have it saved and then you close it, unfortunately, that information will not stay. It's also important to point out that you can't just print this out. There's nothing wrong with that. I know I prefer hard copies of everything. It took me I don't think I got a Kindle until about a year ago for that exact reason. But it is really great, and it breaks down information and fillables for your children. So it can be things such as your information, your children's information, school contact information, caregiver contact information. It goes really in depth. And I also want to say that, again, your emergency kit is for your family. So maybe you're looking through it and you're just like, hey, I don't want to fill out this part. I don't want it in it. That's fine. You want to do it in a way that works for your family. And, there's no cookie cutter yes or no way to prepare for emergencies. So this is a great way. This is a snapshot from it. And it's a great way to see it up close. Who lives in your house? Who is there? So we have our primary residents, our family or occupants within the family home, and then pets or animals that reside in the residency. Because we have definitely learned from other disasters that pets are family, and that there are people that will not evacuate if their animals cannot come with them, and we understand that, and we appreciate that. And we want to give an avenue for people to write emergency information about their pets if that is something that applies to them. I have 2 cats. I love them with every ounce of my being. My cats are definitely in my emergency plan, and I completely admit that. But again, it is whatever works for your family. Your plan is going to be as diverse and different as your family is. No 2 families are exactly the same, so no 2 plans are exactly the same. Important contact information. As it says, this is definitely one of the most important pages within this appendix. And the reason for that being is, as I said, distant family. So that's usually your out of area contact that we talked about, your doctor information. And that is important because let's say there's a large scale evacuation where, unfortunately, a shelter has to be opened. Our shelters, our emergency shelters do have a way of helping get people their medication. We just need proof or evidence that you do take that medication, and that can be in a form of contacting a doctor's office. So it's really important that, you have this kind of stuff written down because, when people are scared or frustrated, it can be hard to remember important information, including even your own doctor information. Your work contact information is important, and then your school contact information, that can be if you are someone that is in school or if your children are in school. And then emergency contacts. As I said earlier in this presentation, you want to make sure that you have an out of area contact. So if something unfortunately affects this area on a large scale, this is someone that will not be affected by it. And it is someone that you could contact, and that they're not going to be getting affected by what is going on around you. And you need to discuss with them. Let's say there is an emergency. How do you want to contact them? For example, not everyone uses social media. Some people just use text message, and that's completely fine. And if that is, your out of area contact, you just need to be transparent with them that, let's say, hey, Aunt Jones, if there's an emergency going on, I'm going to text you. Is this number still the best number? There's nothing wrong with just saying, hey, I just want to make sure. I know we talk all the time, but let's just verify everything to be safe. Social media is great, though, because, if we have Wi-Fi still up, but for some reason cell towers are overwhelmed by everyone calling 911 in emergency response, social media is a great way. And we also, Ready Fairfax, do updates through our Facebook and Twitter. So we really, really do use social media, and we do hope that you choose to follow us on social media if you are not already. And then, do I stay or do I go? So I'm going to leave the screen, and Carly's going to stay. But before we do that, Carly, is there anything you would like to add from the stuff I talked about? Anything you just want to, I just give you your time to shine.
No, Mariah, I think you covered all of it really well. The one thing that Mariah had mentioned towards the end there was that every family's plan is going to look a little bit different because every family has different needs, different structure. And I'm going to jump in a minute here and talk about special considerations for families who have individuals with access and functional needs. So kind of springboard off of that. But we're going to get into talking about how do you make that decision if you should stay or if you should evacuate. And really what that's going to come down to is listening to your news sources, whether it's Fairfax Alerts, Mariah mentioned we do use social media to reach residents with information. You can watch the news, listen to the radio. When all else fails, if the internet and cell towers aren't working, a battery-powered radio is a great backup to have because generally that will be the last thing to fail you. So yeah, we'll keep moving through the slides and kind of discuss how to make that decision. So again, we want to write down in our plan our meeting places. And you can see here, this is another little snippet from the Community Emergency Response Guide that we have online. And you can see here, when it discusses planning to meet up or at a shelter, it has two different sections here. So the first one is a local meeting place, and this could be a neighbor's house, your favorite library, your favorite store, somewhere relatively close to your home so that you could get there on foot if you had to. And then the second box down there is an out-of-town meeting place. So similar to what Mariah was just talking about with an out-of-town emergency contact, we want to have an out-of-area meetup place as well, so that if there is a large-scale disaster happening in Fairfax or in your neighborhood, you and your family have a plan and you're all on the same page about where you're going to go to meet up. That way, if something happens where, maybe you and your spouse are both at work, the kids are at school, etc., you're all going to end up in the same place and you're not going to be scrambling to figure out where everybody's at. So the other thing that we're going to talk about is escape plans. So identifying the best ways to escape from your home is extremely important. This is another thing that you would definitely want to involve your kids in if you have them. And this doesn't have to be a scary thing for them either. You can make it a fun exercise to see how quickly they can escape from your home and identify different areas or different exit routes basically that they have. And when you do these drills, you always want to end at your meeting place. So you can see in the image here, the little image of the tree. That's just an example in this situation of a place that this family has deemed a safe distance from their house where they're all going to meet up. And it's important to always finish your exercise with that so it's kind of cemented in everybody's mind about where that meeting place is. Additionally, you want to make sure that you share your plan. So when you go through all that work, you've created your plan, you have a written copy, you know where it is, but you don't want to just let it collect dust on a shelf somewhere. You want to be familiar with it and, like we talked about, practicing. And you also want to share it with somebody that you trust. So this could be family or a close friend. And you want to make sure that they understand your plan, especially if they are your out of area point for meeting up. You want to make sure that they have a heads up that you're going to be coming to them in an emergency. And then the other important thing that we want to involve in our practicing is the utility shutoffs. Knowing where those are could become very important in a disaster situation. So we want to make sure that we know where those are in our home. And these include things like gas meters, the water shutoff, the electric as well. These are in different places in every home, and they may look a little bit different depending on if you live in an apartment or a single family home. So really make sure you understand where all of those are. And if you have the ability to do that, you can practice just turning those off really quick as well to make sure that you understand how they work. If you ever do have to evacuate, make sure that you do turn off your utilities before leaving your home. And that way, if, for example, if a gas line gets damaged while you're away, you don't come back to a house that's filled with gas, because that's another disaster on top of an already bad situation that you don't want to have to deal with. So this image shows a lot of different important documentation that we would want to include in our plan. So you can make copies of important things like birth certificates, social security cards, insurance cards are going to be extremely important to have access to if your home is damaged or destroyed. You don't have to keep the physical copies with your plan unless you want to, but it is good to have copies of that stuff in case the originals are destroyed or you don't have access to them. Now, this is the section 2. We've mentioned it a few times, But it is extremely important to make sure that you are going to receive emergency alerts so that you have the most time possible to react to an emergency and to know that it's coming. In Fairfax County, we do have Fairfax Alerts, which Mariah has talked about a little bit about how you can customize it. It's a great resource. I do get all the traffic alerts because I like that. So you really can customize it for what works for you. We also have our Fairfax County emergency blog. Yep, there's the Fairfax Alerts website. Again, new users will go to one portal. Existing users can use the other if you want to adjust the notifications that you get. So it really is customizable. Really, it's a great system. We do also have Twitter and Facebook, which Mariah had mentioned. And we do send out a monthly newsletter through Fairfax Alerts as well. So if you are interested in learning more about how to prepare for emergencies or the threats that occur in Fairfax County, that's a great resource to sign up for through Fairfax Alerts. You can see on the slide here our social media handles, and then TV is great too, just watching the local news for emergency updates. And again, good old-fashioned radio. If all else fails, that's a good option to go to. So.
You know, I've asked some kids because as you know, and for the people listening, I assist with Boy and Girl Scouts that are getting their emergency preparedness merit badge. You'd be surprised how many children don't know how to tune a radio. And I felt so old. So it is definitely a change, but you are completely right. I recommend scheduling your family practice celebration/picnics for spring and fall, along with time shift and detector checks. I think that is a fantastic recommendation. What do you think, Carly?
That's great. And it kind of goes along too with, we always talk about 6 months. Every 6 months, you want to kind of check your emergency kit, reevaluate, has anything changed in your life? And that goes along with that as well. That's a great plan. I like the detector checks as well. That's something else that we can throw in there.
Yeah, definitely don't ignore if your smoke detector is doing that chirping sound. Unfortunately, you know, we hear all the time that people's smoke detectors are chirping, which means the battery is running low, so that they take the battery out. Please do not do that. If your smoke detector is chirping, please replace the batteries or contact someone that can assist you with doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then let's see, we're at here practicing. So this is a topic that I really enjoy talking about because I think this can be a lot of fun no matter where you're at in life, if you have kids or not. It doesn't have to be a scary thing for you and your family. And practicing can come in a lot of different formats. So if you have kids that have a lot of energy, it might be a great idea to practice evacuating and have them flip through your plan and show you where certain things are, certain contacts. If you are an individual with access or functional needs and maybe you can't move around as easily, it doesn't have to be that complicated to practice your plan. It could be something as simple as making sure that you can find your pharmacy's phone number in your emergency plan, or walking around your house and just looking at the different utility shutoffs and knowing where those are. So it doesn't have to be stressful or complicated. Sometimes even just talking about it with our family or support group, that's a form of practicing as well, those mental preparations. Again, practicing with children, you can make it a game. Giving prizes to the first person to reach your home shelter place, that's a really fun way to make it an exciting experience for the kids and not scary. You can time the family members' responses and make it a competition. And then stop, drop, and roll is always a hit with children. They always seem to enjoy it. And that, well, it's not going to scare them so much as it will make them feel empowered to respond and react in an emergency. So kids, I think sometimes we underestimate them and we want to shelter them, which comes from a good place. But kids are tough. And if we give them the resources to handle themselves in an emergency, they will soak it up. I used to teach kids like self-defense and emergency response, and they love it. So it is fun to practice with kids. So I definitely highly recommend. I see a question on here. Does Fairfax County have the access to shut down the general utilities like gas when there is an emergency? So we have utility companies like Dominion Power, Fairfax Water. They would have the ability to do that in an emergency situation. Fairfax County would have their Department of Public Works and Environmental Services who work very closely with them, but we wouldn't be physically shutting that off.
I will say that we do have the emergency contact information for them. So, in times of activation of our emergency operations center, we do have phone numbers and emails that we can use in times of emergency if we need to get to them immediately. So, as Carly said, it would not be us, no, but we have the information and resources to get the requests to them very, very quickly.
Yeah, great question. Let's see. All right, so we are going to discuss some special considerations now, and this is kind of where my wheelhouse comes into play. So if you do have access or functional needs, or you have a family member or a loved one who has something that can present a challenge when responding to emergencies, we're just going to talk about some special considerations that you can do before, during, and after an emergency. So you can see here, this is just another snippet of the Community Emergency Response Guide from online. And this section specifically gives you the option to enter information for a caregiver, medical services, any other services that you rely on, transportation, and your service animal as well. And we're going to talk in a minute here about preparing for pets, but that's another thing that we don't want to forget about, as Mariah mentioned. We want to make sure they're ready too. So before a disaster, these are some things that you can do to prepare yourself if you have access or functional needs. So you want to make sure, again, that you're writing down your caregiver's information and emergency contact. And doing so and talking to your family members can create like a support network around you. So you don't want to ever have to feel alone in an emergency, and talking to people around you beforehand can help build up a team that can support you should the need arise. And I always say too, it's a good idea to have a backup to your backup. So if you normally rely on one caretaker, talk to that person and see what the backup plan is if they can't make it in for whatever reason, and have a backup to your backup. You also want to identify where you will go in an emergency and plan for any assistance to get to a shelter. So if you have a place that you can go that is not a public shelter, that's probably more ideal if you can find that. But if not, you want to make sure that you have everything you need if you have to evacuate to a shelter, and talk to your caregiver or support team, whoever that looks like, about accompanying you to a shelter if the need arises. During a disaster, it's always best if you're safe where you are to stay there. If it's not easy for you to evacuate and there's equipment that you need and all these special considerations, if you can stay where you are, just stay where you are, and you'll be safe there. Just make sure that you're listening to local alerts and news and all of that to make sure that you're getting accurate information. You also want to contact your relatives or caregiver to let them know where you are. And again, you want to keep those calls brief, like Mariah mentioned earlier, to kind of conserve that battery life on your cell phone so you can text or email or use social media. Again, I mentioned watching the TV, listening to the radio, making sure that you're really aware of what's going on so you can make accurate and the best decisions for you. And then if you need to evacuate, you want to make sure you take your go bag, any pets that you have, especially if they're service animals. You never want to leave your pet behind. And then any other essentials that you would need to function independently or with assistance in a shelter. And I see a question, is texting 911 available at Fairfax County? Yes, absolutely, it is. You can text them and it goes to the dispatchers in the same way a 911 call would.
They're big on the whole, yes, there it is, call if you can, text if you can. So
Yes.
that is definitely an option.
Yep. And in times too when the cell phone systems, the cell towers might be tied up because of a lot of people calling for an emergency. A text might go through, whereas a cell phone call won't. So that is a good option. If your phone won't connect and you're trying to call 911, text them and see if that will work better for you. All right. So we're going to move in. This is talking about after a disaster, some things that you would want to keep in mind if you do have access or functional needs. You want to make sure you're checking the area to make sure it's safe before you return. And you want to be considering things for example, if you use a wheelchair and your home flooded, you don't want to be, wheeling your chair through standing water. There may be broken glass or debris. So you really want to do a good check before you try to re-enter to make sure that it's safe. Make sure that you're receiving physical first aid or mental health first aid if you need it. That's always a priority. Check with your family and friends. Let them know what's going on, if you still need assistance or if you're doing okay. If you did use items that you had in your go bag, make sure that you replace those too. Because if it happened once, you may need it again, hopefully not. But we want to make sure, like we said, every 6 months they're being refreshed. And if you use something, replace it right away, for sure. And then the last one on here is evaluate your plan and adjust it as needed. So in any disaster or emergency, we're going to learn things that we probably wouldn't have thought of before. And we will probably have to readjust and reevaluate, which is fine. That's just part of our planning process. So that's an important step to being prepared as well. If you have infants or children, you want to be talking to your child's daycare or school about their emergency plans. So a lot of times schools will have plans to evacuate children or set up a reunification center for the families to meet up again. And it's important to know in advance what their plans are so that you can respond accordingly. Make sure you discuss who in your family is responsible for picking up your kids. So you don't want to assume that, for example, your mom is going to go pick up the kids and she thinks you're going to pick up the kids, and it could end badly. So have that discussion in advance.
Can I add one personal situation to that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Once I wanted to pick up my niece from school, and we learned the hard way that my sister forgot to put me on the pickup list. So definitely include and understand who is in your children's approved pickup list, because schools are not going to, and they shouldn't, give your children to people that they know do not have permission to take your children. It is smart and it is safe. So it is really, really important that parents, inform the school who is on the approved pickup list, who can pick up their child, and they know ahead of time, so that we don't run into this, because it was really awkward. I was trying to get her off the bus. The bus driver was really safe about it. And the bus driver, called my sister and confirmed that I was who I was and got consent to give my niece to me. But it was a really awkward scenario. We never want to be in it. So just make sure that everyone that should be on your emergency pickup list is on it.
That's a great point, Mariah. Yeah, thank you. Excellent point. And that can be, again, written into your plan if need be. So pets and service animals, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, we definitely never want to leave our pets at home if we evacuate. You can either research pet-friendly hotels in the area and write that into your plan. You could also bring them to the shelter.
I agree, Andrew.
Yeah. Yeah, he said the bus driver was awesome, which is true. Yeah. So Fairfax County does try our absolute best to make sure that all the pets who arrive at shelters can be accommodated for. Hopefully, it will never exceed our resources, but I would say bring your pets, and we'll do our best to accommodate there. Alternatively, you could leave them at a friend's house as well if you had to. And then if you can't get back to your house, identify in advance a trusted friend or neighbor who can retrieve or care for your pet. And that person will have to have a key, most likely, unless you have a lockbox at your home that you give them the code to. And then you want to make sure your animals are wearing collars with up-to-date identification. You can also have your pet microchipped. And it's a good idea, too, to take pictures of your pet with you. I know most people already have tons of those, but it's a good idea to save a few so that if you do get separated from your pet in an emergency, you can prove that you own them if you end up finding them at a shelter. Mariah, I'm going to kick it over to you to talk about what is next on our agenda.
And I am happy to do so. Thank you so much, Carly. You were great. She is amazing and has been fantastic for our access and functional needs community. And we're really lucky and really grateful to have Carly in our department. So, what is next? As I said at the beginning of this webinar, we're doing different topics each month. It's always going to be the first Wednesday of the month. That trend is continuing into April. And we are going to go next into assembling your emergency kit. So your emergency kit is going to be as different and diverse as your family is and your family situation. And it's really not a one size fits all. So it's really important to talk about how to assemble your emergency kit and what that truly means. So I'm really excited for this one. And I'm sure Carly is too, especially with access and functional needs considerations. So it is a really big one, and April is going to be great. It is going to be the first Wednesday of the month, 7 p.m. like every month, and we really hope to see you guys there at that one. Oh, and I beat the slide. Look at that. But right before we leave, I just want to talk about our upcoming events. You see that, unfortunately, naturally the February webinar has passed, but we actually have another webinar coming up, which is our flood awareness webinar, which is just about floods and flood safety. And we're really excited about that, where we have a special guest that actually works with our stormwater department, and they're going to talk all about it. And then we have our Severe Weather Awareness Week webinar that talks about all different types of severe weather. And that is right now. So it was awesome. Wait, actually. Okay. So, and we have our introduction to emergency preparedness, and we have our preparedness awareness weekend, which is super kids friendly, and we're really excited for it. And our Intel Help Arrives. You guys saw me make a face because I realized the March 1st thing on there is incorrect, because I remember we switched the dates on that. So I completely admit that that was my bad. And I'm completely candid on that because it is March 1st right now. And that is not what we're discussing. But it is live. Mistakes happen. That is life. But we're going to get past it. But Preparedness Awareness Weekend, we're really, really excited about that. It's at Providence Community Center. I will be there in person. And it's going to be great. And we're doing demonstrations such as hands-only CPR and tons of different things. And it's going to be really interactive, and people can stay as little or as long as they want. You don't have to commit to the whole day. And then we're going to have Intel Help Arrives training, where community members can sign up. This is all, of course, free of charge, and go through Intel Help Arrives training. And for those that don't know what that is, it is the fact that you are the help until help arrives. So it is how to be emergency assistance before EMS can get to you in times of large disaster or large cases of group injury. And it's going to be a great training, and it's really hands-on, and people get to practice things themselves and get to really see things in action that they might not see. For example, we talk about different types of tourniquets in that training, and not everyone has seen or touched a tourniquet, and that makes sense. It's not something the average person does use. But if you come to that training and you do get to use it and you get to practice putting it on someone, of course, they're training tourniquets to be safe, but it's a great, hands-on experience, and it's fantastic. I love it. So thank you. And Carly, would you like to say some few words before I close this out?
Yeah, thank you, Mariah, for having me on tonight. And if anybody has questions and you're viewing this webinar after the fact, you're welcome to leave your comments or questions, and we will do our best to monitor the chat there to answer anything that you have for follow-up questions.
Well, thank you, Carly. Thank you for being on this webinar. You were a fantastic partner for this, a fantastic co-host, and thank you everyone that came to listen to this webinar live. And thank you for those that are choosing to watch this after it has taken place. We really appreciate everyone's time, and we hope everyone learned something, and have a great rest of your night.